What you are about to move through on May 10th, 2026 is not ordinary, and deep down you can already feel that. There are certain days that pass quietly without leaving a mark on the soul. And then there are days like this, days that seem to vibrate beneath the surface before anything visible has even changed. While most people wake up believing this Saturday is no different from any other weekend, something far more deliberate is unfolding overhead, something arranged with unsettling precision. The sky is not improvising right now. Every movement has been building toward this exact opening, and whether you realize it or not, your life has been slowly steering toward this moment for weeks. What makes today dangerous is not only the magnitude of the energy, but how easy it would be to ignore it. That is how these turning points usually arrive. Quietly, disguised as another normal morning. But beneath the routine, a powerful alignment is forming between the Sun and Jupiter at 20 degrees, creating an exact sextile, a 60-degree connection that astrologers have long associated with opportunity, acceleration, and divine permission. Yet this is not average Jupiter energy. Jupiter is currently moving through Cancer, the sign where its gifts become amplified to their fullest potential, where abundance stops feeling theoretical and begins moving into emotional reality. This is Jupiter operating from a throne of maximum strength, almost as if the universe itself decided to remove every restriction from the planet of growth and blessing all at once. Imagine walking into a room where every door suddenly unlocks at the exact same moment. That is the atmosphere surrounding today. And the reason this energy feels so personal for many of you is because Cancer governs the deepest emotional foundations of life: home, family, safety, belonging, financial security, the hidden emotional architecture you build your entire future upon. That strange sensation you have been carrying lately, the pull toward changing your living situation, repairing family wounds, protecting your future, or finally building stability in a way that actually nourishes your spirit instead of draining it. That is not your imagination. Something inside you has already started responding to this alignment before your conscious mind fully understood why. The reason this matters so much is because the next 24 hours are not centered around a single cosmic event. They are built around 3 separate energetic thresholds, unfolding within the same day. 3 spiritual gates layered on top of one another, each demanding a different version of you. Some traditions describe this as a 3 doors portal, because every stage requires a choice, and each choice determines whether you remain trapped inside old cycles or finally move into a completely different timeline. The terrifying part is that many people will never recognize these doors while they are standing directly in front of them. They will sleep through them emotionally, spiritually disconnected from what the universe is trying to place in their hands. And later, when opportunities begin appearing for everyone around them, when other people suddenly seem to rise, evolve, attract, and expand, they will wonder why their own reality stayed frozen. What they will not realize is that expansion requires participation. The universe opens the door, but it does not drag you through it. That is why this energy feels urgent. It moves quickly. It rewards awareness. It does not wait for emotional hesitation. And if the past several days have felt emotionally heavier than usual, there is a reason for that too. Think back to May 1st, 2026, when the Scorpio full moon forced hidden emotions to rise to the surface. Many people experienced that lunation like an emotional storm they could not fully explain. Old pain resurfaced. Obsessions intensified. Truths that had been buried beneath distraction suddenly became impossible to ignore. But that full moon was never designed to destroy you. It was designed to empty you. Scorpio energy strips away emotional poison before expansion can occur. The emotional intensity, the confrontation with unresolved fears, the resurfacing memories, all of it was part of a clearing process. Then came May 6th, when Pluto stationed retrograde in Aquarius, pulling consciousness inward like a psychological undertow. Pluto does not ask politely. It forces excavation. It drags hidden fears, control patterns, and survival mechanisms into the light, whether you feel prepared or not. If your dreams have felt stranger lately, if old insecurities suddenly returned, if parts of yourself you thought you already healed began resurfacing again, that was Pluto revealing the unfinished material still living beneath your transformation. And this is the truth many people refuse to hear. You cannot enter a new chapter while secretly remaining loyal to the identity that kept you small. Real abundance demands psychological honesty. It requires you to stop clinging to outdated versions of yourself that were built inside fear, rejection, or emotional survival. Then on May 9th, the last quarter moon in Aquarius arrived like a spiritual pressure point, creating what astrologers often call a crisis in consciousness. Many people felt restless without understanding why. Social masks began cracking. Outdated beliefs felt heavier than usual. Certain friendships, environments, or collective dynamics suddenly felt emotionally disconnected from who you are becoming. That discomfort was not random either. The universe was making room. It was asking you to release attachments that no longer matched your future frequency. Everything that happened this week was preparation for today. The emotional purge, the shadow confrontation, the identity release, none of these were punishments. They were prerequisites. Because what is trying to enter your life now cannot breathe inside emotional clutter. The first doorway opens this morning before most people are even fully awake, and this is where the energy becomes deeply karmic. Jupiter in Cancer forms a trioctile, a 135-degree angle to the North Node in Pisces. For those unfamiliar with astrology, this matters far more than it initially appears. The North Node represents the direction your soul is trying to evolve toward, the uncomfortable but necessary path your spirit came here to grow through. It points toward unfamiliar territory, toward the future version of yourself that requires courage to become real. And today, Jupiter is activating that point with enormous force. Almost like destiny itself, is testing whether you are finally prepared to stop negotiating with your own potential. The energy moving through this first doorway is not interested in preserving your comfort zone, and that is exactly why it feels so emotionally intense. There is a difference between what protects you and what transforms you, and today the universe is forcing you to confront that difference directly. The North Node in Pisces does not care about maintaining familiar routines or keeping your life emotionally predictable. It pulls you toward evolution, toward experiences that dissolve the old identity you built out of fear, and replace it with something spiritually authentic. And when Jupiter, the planet connected to expansion, belief, growth, and opportunity, forms this challenging 135-degree trioctile to that destiny point, an internal collision begins unfolding inside you. One side of your spirit craves stability, certainty, financial safety, emotional protection. Another side feels increasingly unable to ignore the deeper calling that has been quietly growing beneath the surface for months. This is where many people become emotionally divided without realizing why. You may wake up this morning feeling strangely unsettled, almost as if two versions of your future are pulling on you at the same time. One path feels familiar, practical, socially acceptable. The other feels uncertain, deeply emotional, almost impossible to explain logically, yet impossible to ignore. That tension is not failure. It is the exact pressure point this first doorway was designed to create, because the universe is trying to expose the real motivation beneath your desires. There are people right now chasing success because they believe achievement will finally make them feel worthy. Others are chasing money because deep down they are terrified of insecurity. Some are pursuing relationships, recognition, or stability, not because those things genuinely align with their soul, but because they are desperately trying to fill emotional emptiness with external validation. And today, that distortion becomes impossible to hide from yourself. Jupiter in Cancer amplifies emotional truth. It magnifies the emotional foundation underneath every ambition you carry. If your goals are rooted in fear, comparison, scarcity, or the need to prove yourself to people who never truly saw your value, this first door will create emotional friction so powerful that you cannot ignore it anymore. You may feel irritated without understanding why, restless, emotionally distracted, as though your spirit is trying to reject something your ego still wants to cling to. That discomfort is the karmic adjustment happening in real time. Because your higher self is no longer willing to let you build your future on survival patterns that belong to your past. And yet, this doorway is not here to punish you. It is here to realign you. The moment you become honest about what is truly driving your desires, everything begins shifting. The resistance starts dissolving. The emotional confusion turns into clarity. Suddenly you realize that your material goals are not supposed to compete with your spiritual evolution. They are supposed to support it. Financial security is not wrong. Stability is not wrong. Wanting comfort, love, safety, and abundance is not spiritually shallow. The problem begins when those desires are pursued from fear instead of alignment. The universe is asking whether your ambitions are helping your soul expand or helping your fears remain hidden. And if you can answer that honestly today, the energy changes immediately. What felt blocked begins moving. What felt emotionally heavy begins opening. The friction transforms into momentum because now your outer goals and inner truth are finally moving in the same direction. But before the second doorway fully opens, there is another layer to all of this that most people never notice. And missing it would mean missing one of the most important opportunities hidden inside today's astrology. The Sun is currently moving through Taurus, a sign connected to resources, stability, value, wealth, and physical reality. Taurus seeks permanence. It wants to build something tangible and lasting. But Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus right now is not sitting quietly in an earth sign focused on comfort or routine. Venus is in Gemini, restless, verbal, mentally active, constantly exchanging information, constantly creating movement through communication. This changes everything, because it reveals the hidden mechanism behind today's opportunities. The breakthroughs arriving now are not entering through traditional pathways. This is not the kind of energy where success quietly appears after following old formulas. The universe is channeling opportunity through Gemini themes, through conversation, through ideas, through communication, through networking, through the courage to express what has been trapped inside your mind. Many of you have felt an increasing urge lately to finally say something you have been suppressing, to share an idea, launch a project, contact someone important, speak honestly, or stop minimizing your voice. That impulse is directly connected to today's alignment. Your words carry unusual energetic power right now. Conversations become catalysts. Information becomes currency. One interaction could redirect your future more than months of silent preparation ever could. This is why remaining emotionally closed today becomes dangerous. The universe is trying to move opportunities through your voice. And if fear keeps you silent, you block the very pathway abundance is attempting to travel through. There are ideas inside you right now that were never meant to stay hidden. There are connections waiting to form once you stop overthinking every sentence before speaking it aloud. This is not random confidence building. This is energetic timing. The astrology itself is revealing that communication is the bridge between your current reality and the next chapter trying to emerge. Then, just after the middle of the day, the second doorway begins opening, and the emotional atmosphere changes completely. The moon moves into Pisces, and the moment it does, the energy stops feeling intellectual and becomes deeply intuitive. Since the moon rules Cancer, and Cancer currently holds exalted Jupiter, the moon acts almost like the emotional channel through which Jupiter's blessings flow. And Pisces is not a sign interested in logic or certainty. Pisces dissolves boundaries. It weakens the walls between conscious thought and spiritual knowing. It heightens dreams, emotional sensitivity, psychic impressions, synchronicities, symbolic messages, and the strange intuitive nudges people often dismiss because they cannot explain them rationally. Suddenly, the quiet feeling you have been carrying begins making sense. That strange inner pull toward change, that unexplainable certainty that something is shifting beneath the surface of your life, that awareness is intensifying because the moon in Pisces is activating your inner knowing directly. This is not imagination. This is not emotional instability. This is your deeper consciousness trying to prepare you for a reality your logical mind has not fully caught up with yet. But this second doorway demands something extremely difficult from people who rely on control to feel safe. It demands surrender. You cannot force this energy into a spreadsheet. You cannot strategize every outcome. You cannot dominate intuition with logic and expect to receive the full blessing of this portal. In fact, the harder you try to control today's unfolding events, the more disconnected you become from the guidance trying to reach you. That is why some of you may feel emotionally vulnerable this afternoon. The opportunities arising now may not appear logical at first. They may arrive through a dream, a coincidence, a sudden emotional realization, a random conversation, a strange instinct you cannot explain. And your mind will immediately want certainty before action. But this doorway was never designed to give certainty first. It asks for trust before evidence. It asks whether you are finally willing to stop demanding complete visibility before taking the next step. Because the second door is not about intellectual understanding, it is about emotional recognition. It is about learning to trust what your spirit already knows before your physical reality fully confirms it. There is a narrow energetic window opening between 1 and 3 in the afternoon today. And if you are emotionally present enough to notice it, you may realize something extraordinary is happening beneath the surface of your ordinary thoughts. This is not the kind of moment that announces itself loudly. It arrives quietly, almost invisibly, through impressions, flashes of emotion, symbolic images, sudden memories, strange urges, and thoughts that seem to appear from nowhere. Most people will dismiss these experiences because they do not fit neatly into logic. They will call them distractions, random imagination, emotional noise. But what is unfolding during these hours is far more significant than that. The moon moving through Pisces is weakening the barrier between your conscious awareness and the deeper intuitive intelligence that exists beneath it. That means information is no longer traveling only through rational thought. It is moving through feeling, through symbols, through emotional recognition, through instinct. You may suddenly picture a future you have never seriously allowed yourself to imagine before. You may feel a powerful emotional reaction to a conversation, a song, a memory, or even a passing sentence that seems strangely timed. Some of you may experience a sudden knowing about what needs to change in your life, even though you cannot fully explain where that certainty came from. Others may feel pulled toward a specific person, place, project, or decision with unusual emotional intensity. None of this is accidental. These moments are arriving like transmissions directly from your higher consciousness, bypassing the analytical part of your mind that constantly tries to filter everything through fear, practicality, and past conditioning. That is why it is so important not to immediately judge what arises during this window. Your logical mind will try to dismiss intuitive guidance the second it appears. It will demand proof before trust. It will attempt to shrink spiritual recognition back into something emotionally manageable. But today is not asking you to analyze everything. It is asking you to receive. Write down what appears. Pay attention to recurring thoughts. Notice what emotions intensify unexpectedly. Observe the images or inner visions that repeat themselves throughout the afternoon. Because what enters your awareness during these hours is not meaningless emotional static. It is forming the energetic blueprint for what you are beginning to manifest over the coming weeks. The universe is not only opening doors today, it is also revealing instructions for what waits on the other side of them. And there is another layer hidden inside today's astrology that most people never even think to examine, yet it reveals one of the clearest messages of the entire alignment. Both the Sun and Jupiter are currently positioned at 20 degrees within their respective signs, and in Sabian symbolism, this corresponds to the 21st degree, where symbolic imagery is used to uncover deeper spiritual meaning hidden inside planetary positions. The image associated with the 21st degree of Taurus is deeply revealing. It shows a finger pointing toward a specific line inside an open book. This is the symbol of divine instruction, sacred guidance, and meaningful synchronicity. It represents the ancient idea that the universe communicates through symbols, timing, and messages hidden within seemingly ordinary experiences. In older mystical traditions, this was connected to bibliomancy, the practice of opening a sacred text and receiving direct guidance from the exact words your eyes land upon. Spiritually, this degree is about learning to recognize that life is constantly speaking to you, even when the message does not arrive in obvious ways. The right sentence overheard at the perfect moment, the unexpected coincidence that feels too precise to ignore. The repeated signs that keep appearing no matter how hard you try to dismiss them. Today, the universe is asking you to pay attention differently, to stop assuming everything meaningful must arrive logically, to understand that guidance often appears symbolically first. But then there is Jupiter in Cancer, occupying the 21st degree of its own sign, and the image associated with this degree reveals the next stage of the story. The symbol here is a famous opera singer performing before an audience, demonstrating mastery, emotional depth, and cultivated talent through their voice. This is not the image of hidden potential. It is the image of expression. Someone who spent years refining their gifts, finally stepping into visibility and allowing their abilities to move other people emotionally. And when you place these two Sabian symbols together, the message becomes impossible to ignore. First comes the instruction. Then comes the embodiment. First you receive the insight, the vision, the inner guidance, the intuitive message. Then you are asked to act on it publicly, courageously, visibly. This is why today's astrology is not simply about attracting abundance or waiting passively for luck to appear. It is about becoming willing to carry what you receive into the world without shrinking yourself in fear. The universe may hand you the script today, but it will still require you to step onto the stage and speak the lines out loud. Many people receive intuitive guidance but never act on it because visibility terrifies them. They fear judgment, failure, exposure, rejection. They fear being fully seen. But Jupiter in Cancer is asking for emotional authenticity, not perfection. It wants you to build something real, rooted, nourishing, and emotionally aligned with who you actually are. And that requires visibility. It requires courage. It requires trusting that your voice was never meant to remain hidden inside your own mind forever. Then, as the evening approaches, the energy reaches its most powerful point. At 10:15 at night, the Sun and Jupiter perfect their exact sextile at 20 degrees and 25 minutes, and this becomes the central activation point of the entire day. This is when the doorway opens widest. A sextile is different from a trine because it does not simply hand blessings to passive observers. A trine flows naturally without demanding effort. A sextile, however, offers possibility that must be consciously accepted. It is an invitation, not a guarantee. The universe arranges the circumstances, removes resistance, aligns timing, and presents opportunity, but you still have to move toward it willingly. You still have to participate. And because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, the abundance connected to this alignment is not shallow or temporary. This is not reckless luck designed to disappear as quickly as it arrives. Cancer energy seeks emotional permanence. It wants to create foundations that last, homes that feel safe, financial structures that nourish future generations, emotional security rooted in genuine care and stability. This is why today's alignment strongly supports matters connected to real estate, family businesses, ancestral healing, emotional security, domestic stability, and long-term financial grounding. If you have been considering changing your living situation, investing in property, creating a home-based project, strengthening family bonds, or finally establishing a more emotionally secure foundation for your future, tonight carries unusually supportive energy for those intentions. But once again, the sextile requires conscious action. You cannot sit motionless and expect the portal to drag abundance into your life automatically. The universe has already opened the path. Now it is waiting to see whether you trust yourself enough to walk through it. Yet just when it seems like the energy should begin settling down, the final doorway opens, and this third threshold may be the most psychologically intense of them all. At 11 at night, Venus in Gemini forms a trioctile to Pluto, retrograde in Aquarius, and this is where the shadow material rises. Venus governs love, self-worth, money, attraction, values, and emotional receptivity. Pluto governs control, obsession, power, hidden fear, psychological transformation, and the unconscious layers of the self most people spend years avoiding. With Pluto retrograde, these buried emotional patterns become internalized and unavoidable. Suddenly, the abundance, opportunity, or emotional opening you experienced earlier in the day begins activating your deepest insecurities around deservingness. This is the hidden test of the third doorway. Because the moment something good begins approaching your life, the unconscious mind immediately asks whether it is safe to receive it, whether you are truly worthy of it, whether you can sustain it without losing yourself. And that is where the real transformation begins. The final doorway does not open with celebration. It opens with confrontation. After all the momentum of the day, after the intuitive revelations, the emotional breakthroughs, the sudden opportunities and spiritual clarity, something unexpected begins happening beneath the surface. The moment life starts moving in your favor, another voice rises from the shadows inside you, and that voice does not sound confident. It sounds afraid. The instant you begin receiving something beautiful, whether it is love, recognition, stability, abundance, or emotional validation, the subconscious immediately starts searching for reasons why it cannot last. Questions begin surfacing almost automatically. What if this disappears? What if I ruin this somehow? What if I'm not truly capable of holding the life I claim to want? This is the real purpose of the third doorway. And unlike the earlier portals, this one cannot be bypassed through positivity or spiritual performance. The universe is not only observing whether you can attract opportunities into your life, it is observing whether your nervous system is emotionally prepared to sustain them without collapsing back into old survival patterns. This is why the Venus in Gemini trioctile to Pluto, retrograde in Aquarius, becomes so psychologically powerful tonight. Venus rules your relationship with love, money, pleasure, self-worth, and emotional receptivity. Pluto retrograde drags unconscious fear into visibility. Together, they expose the hidden emotional programming that quietly shapes your behavior when things finally begin improving. For some people, this will emerge through relationships. The moment emotional intimacy deepens, old fears around abandonment, betrayal, jealousy, or emotional control suddenly reappear. You may notice yourself becoming suspicious of happiness, almost as though part of you expects love to disappear the second you trust it fully. Others will experience this through finances or opportunity. something promising may arrive. And instead of excitement, your mind immediately begins imagining failure. Catastrophic thinking takes over. You start mentally rehearsing loss before success has even had a chance to settle into your reality. This is the shadow material Pluto retrograde is exposing. And what makes this doorway so important is that whatever remains unconscious now will attempt to sabotage everything you opened earlier in the day. The abundance itself is not unstable. The issue is whether your internal identity can emotionally tolerate receiving it. Many people unconsciously destroy blessings because deep down they still identify with struggle. Success feels emotionally unfamiliar, and the nervous system often interprets unfamiliarity as danger. That is why the third doorway requires radical honesty. You must be willing to look directly at the parts of yourself that still believe you are not enough, the part terrified of visibility, the part convinced that success always comes with punishment, the part that believes love must eventually disappear, the part still emotionally attached to scarcity because scarcity once felt safer than disappointment. Tonight, those patterns rise for one reason only: to be released consciously instead of continuing to rule your future from the shadows. Because the deeper truth underneath all of this is that your worthiness has never actually been missing. It was never something you needed to earn through exhaustion, sacrifice, or endless self-proving. The abundance entering your life today is not asking you to become worthy first. It is asking you to finally stop rejecting what was already meant for you. And what makes today's portal even more significant is that it is not a conclusion. It is the opening movement of a much larger cycle that continues unfolding throughout the coming week. Many people will misunderstand this and assume the energy peaks today and then disappears. But May 10th, 2026 is only the preparation phase. On May 16th, the new moon in Taurus arrives, and that lunation becomes the planting point for everything activated during today's three-door portal. If today was the clearing, the emotional excavation, the spiritual download, then the Taurus new moon becomes the moment where intention finally takes physical form. It becomes the moment where ideas begin turning into structure, where emotional realization becomes commitment, where vision becomes action. That means the days between now and May 16th are critically important. You are being given less than a week to process what surfaces today, to understand the emotional lessons revealed through the portal, to recognize the synchronicities, and to decide what future you are actually willing to build. Do not treat today's experiences casually. Pay attention to every emotional shift, every unexpected conversation, every intuitive realization, every opportunity that suddenly appears. Notice which doors begin opening naturally and which old attachments suddenly feel impossible to carry anymore. Because by the time the Taurus new moon arrives, you will need clarity about what seeds you are truly planting for the future. The manifestations connected to this cycle will not emerge through fantasy alone. They will emerge through conscious participation in the rhythm unfolding around you. That is the deeper spiritual law operating underneath today's astrology. Manifestation is not passive wishing. It is alignment between inner readiness and external opportunity. And there is one final layer hidden inside Jupiter in Cancer that makes this entire portal even more emotionally profound than most people realize. Jupiter moving through Cancer is not only connected to personal growth or individual success. Cancer governs ancestry, family lineage, emotional inheritance, and the invisible bonds connecting generations together. This means the healing, abundance, and breakthroughs activated today are not limited to you alone. They move through your bloodline like a ripple through water. The emotional patterns you heal now affect the lineage behind you and the lineage ahead of you. The courage you choose today becomes larger than your individual story. In many ways, this portal is about becoming the person in your family line who finally stops repeating inherited cycles of fear, limitation, emotional silence, or scarcity. Jupiter, exalted in Cancer, magnifies the understanding that human beings are not isolated, souls disconnected from one another. We are continuations of stories that began long before we were born. We carry emotional inheritances from generations that survived: pain, loss, sacrifice, instability, and silence. And sometimes one person emerges within a lineage to finally transform those inherited patterns into something different. That is why today's energy feels emotionally larger than a normal astrological transit. Somewhere beneath the surface, many of you can feel that this moment is not only about your own future, it is about becoming the turning point your lineage has been waiting for. Every act of healing today echoes backward and forward through time. Every moment you choose self-worth over fear weakens old ancestral patterns. Every decision to accept abundance instead of rejecting it creates a new emotional possibility for the generations connected to you. That is why fear cannot be allowed to make your decisions tonight. You are more supported than you realize. The final test of this portal will arrive through choices that initially seem small. A message you finally send, a conversation you stop avoiding, a chance you decide to take despite uncertainty, a moment where intuition says move forward while fear says stay where you are. These decisions may appear ordinary on the surface, but they are not small at all. Tiny choices often become the invisible hinges upon which entire futures swing. And today those hinges are loosened, prepared, ready for movement. Most people will feel this energy and still hesitate. They will wait for certainty that never comes. They will demand guarantees before action. They will postpone transformation until fear disappears completely, and by then the portal will already be closing. Do not allow yourself to become one of those people. Let today become the moment you stop negotiating with your own becoming. Because months from now, perhaps even years from now, you may look back at May 10th, 2026, and suddenly realize that this was the day the direction of your life quietly changed forever. This was the day you stopped waiting for permission. This was the day you finally trusted the call inside yourself enough to move. The universe is opening 3 doors in front of you today, and now only one question remains. Will you walk through them?